The following morning unfolded with unusual softness. The desert breeze carried a hint of cool moisture, and Matthew noted the sky was brighter than usual, scattered with gentle clouds that floated like white sails on a blue sea. Abba Elias walked ahead, humming a quiet tune, something old, almost ancient. Matthew found himself smiling without knowing why. "What are we doing today?" Matthew asked as he caught up. "A lesson," Elias replied. "But not from me. From someone far wiser in certain matters." Matthew raised an eyebrow. "Wiser than you?" "That I'd like to see." Elias chuckled. "Wisdom comes in many forms. Today's teacher is not a monk, but a child." They continued along a narrow ridge until Matthew spotted movement on the horizon, a small flock of goats grazing near an outcrop of rocks. A girl, no older than 10 or 11, stood watch. She wore a faded dress and a light scarf tied around her hair. Her skin was tanned by the sun, and her eyes sparkled like desert amber. When she saw Elias, her face lit with delight. "Abba Elias," she called, running toward them with joyful steps. Elias opened his arms, greeting her warmly. "Peace be with you, little one." "And with you," she said breathlessly. Then she turned to Matthew, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Is he the one you told me about?" Matthew felt himself blush. "Told her about?" Elias smiled innocently. "I may have mentioned that I was expecting a pilgrim." The girl beamed and stepped closer. "I am Amina," she said confidently. "I take care of my father's goats. And I help Abba Elias when he needs water or firewood." Matthew nodded. "I'm Matthew." Amina studied him with playful seriousness. "You look like someone who forgot how to smile." Matthew blinked. Elias laughed heartily. "See? I told you she was wise." Amina tugged Matthew's sleeve. "Come. I want to show you something." Without waiting, she began walking toward the grazing goats. Matthew glanced at Elias, who nodded. "Follow her," the monk said. "This is your lesson." Matthew hurried after Amina, who led him to a rocky mound where several small desert flowers bloomed, tiny, delicate, pale purple blossoms pushing bravely through cracks in the stone. "Look," Amina said proudly. "Aren't they beautiful?" Matthew knelt beside her. "How do flowers grow here?" he asked, astonished. "There's hardly any soil." Amina shrugged, as though the answer were obvious. "The desert is kind to those who don't give up." Matthew smiled softly. Amina plucked a tiny blossom and handed it to him. "Here. For you." "For me?" Matthew asked, touched. "You looked sad when you arrived," she said simply. "Flowers help." Matthew held the blossom carefully. Something warm stirred in his chest. "You're very kind, Amina." She shrugged again. "Kindness is easy. People make it hard." Matthew felt the truth of that settle inside him. Amina returned to her goats, calling them with soft whistles, guiding them gently as they wandered. Matthew watched her work, how she moved with patience, how she laughed when a baby goat bumped her leg, how she seemed entirely at peace with the world. Elias approached quietly. "What do you see?" he asked. Matthew thought for a moment. "Someone who carries no worry. No fear. No shame. Just joy." "Yes," Elias said. "Because her heart is simple." Matthew looked at the flower in his hand. What does that mean? Elias gestured for them to sit on a warm rock. Amina continued tending her flock nearby, humming a cheerful tune. Matthew, Elias said, the world has taught you to complicate everything: success, relationships, faith, even rest. But the kingdom of God belongs to the simple-hearted. To those who trust easily. Who forgive quickly. Who find joy in small gifts. Matthew watched Amina laugh as a small goat nipped at her scarf. I don't think I've been simple-hearted since I was her age. That is why she is your teacher today, Elias said. To remind you. Matthew frowned. Remind me of what? That life is not meant to be carried, but received. Matthew looked confused. Elias continued, your life has been built on striving. Proving. Achieving. But Amina's life is built on presence. Gratitude. Wonder. Matthew glanced at Amina again. She was petting one of the goats, whispering something gently into its ear. Her smile was bright, unburdened. She has nothing, Matthew said softly. No wealth. No comfort. No security. And yet she looks happier than anyone I know. Elias nodded. And why do you think that is? Matthew thought. Maybe because she trusts. She doesn't try to control everything. Exactly, Elias said. To a child like her, tomorrow is not a threat. It is a gift. She does not fear what she cannot change. She simply lives today well. The monk stood and called to Amina, who ran back to them with eager steps. Amina, Elias said, tell Matthew what you told me once about the desert. Amina nodded proudly. I said the desert is like God. Matthew blinked. How? She tilted her head, thinking. Because it is big, and quiet, and full of surprises. And if you listen, you can hear him talk. Matthew felt a lump rise in his throat. Amina pointed to the sky. And at night, he turns the lights on so we aren't scared. Elias smiled. Do you see why I brought you here? Matthew nodded, his voice soft. Yes. She reminds me of something I forgot. Which is? Elias asked. What it feels like to trust, Matthew whispered. Amina grinned and tugged his sleeve again. Come. I want to show you something else. She led him a few steps away to a flat patch of sand where she knelt and began drawing simple shapes with her finger: stars, flowers, goats, and a heart. I draw these every morning, she said proudly. They make me happy. Matthew knelt beside her and began drawing too: a small cross, a jar, and a tiny figure walking across the desert. Amina pointed. Is that you? Matthew nodded. Yes. And this, he drew a second figure beside the first, is Abba Elias. Amina laughed with delight. The lines look crooked, she teased. Matthew smiled. I'm out of practice. She took his hand and guided his finger across the sand, helping him draw a smoother line. There, she said. Better. Something in him melted completely at that simple gesture, the way a child's hand could steady what life had shaken. As the sun climbed higher, Elias approached once more. Amina, he said, thank you for today's lesson. The girl bowed playfully. Lessons are easy when you're happy. She turned to Matthew. You are smiling now. That means your heart is getting better. Matthew nodded, touched. Yes. It is. Amina ran back to her goats, leaving Matthew and Elias alone. Elias turned to him. What did you learn? Matthew held the tiny purple flower to his chest. That God sometimes teaches through storms, he said. But sometimes he teaches through little girls who laugh. And that, Elias said softly, is the wisdom of the simple-hearted. Matthew inhaled deeply, feeling a lightness he hadn't known in years. Thank you, he whispered. But he was not thanking Elias. He was thanking God, for flowers that bloom in stone, for trust reborn, for a shepherd girl named Amina, and for a desert that never stopped speaking.